Well, hello, old house fans. Here I am again in my old house. Today's the 7th of November, 2024, and I've done a little bit of trim in the living room and dining room. I wanted to get it a little more finished. The windows are going to take a little bit longer, although conceivably I can do the jamb extensions and the casing without it affecting my restoration of the sashes. So I may do that, or I may do one window completely at a time. I haven't decided yet. But here in the living room you can see that I have redone the floors and I have installed baseboard, and on the living room side of the opening to the dining room I've installed casing, and so I have the baseboard all the way around. This is newer baseboard, meaning it's, I went to the lumber yard, this month and got the components. So the components of the baseboard here are a 1x6 is the baseboard itself, and then I have what they call a base cap molding, which has a bit of a curvature to it, and then at the bottom I have not quarter round, which is the same dimension in height and depth, but this is shoe molding, so it is a little taller than it is deep. Although all this modern lumber is smaller in its overall dimension than the lumber that was originally installed in the house. But again, in this particular house, the previous owner had a demolition done, the plaster and lath, and with the plaster and lath was lost most of the original casework. But I did have enough of it left over to do the dining room. And so here in the dining room, the baseboard is the original baseboard that was installed in 1903. It is the original base cap that was installed in 1903. The shoe is not original. I did not have any shoe. I believe the shoe was probably lost when the hardwood floors were installed subsequent to the original floors. But anyway, I have the floors redone. They came out fairly nice, and so it's looking more like a house. The floors did take a little while to do. They're not perfect, but they're much, much improved. Here in the dining room side, again, this is where I'm going to put in original casing. So I have the plinth blocks installed. This is an original plinth block that was installed in 1903. Of course, I've scraped it, sanded it, filled it, and painted it. But that was the original plinth block. On top of the plinth block would be the fluted casing, from the top of the plinth block and up to a corner block at the top corner of the opening. And then you'd have the same fluted casing will go across there, another corner block, and then down to the plinth block. So, and the casing that I have is the original. It's going to take a lot of scraping and finishing. I thought about having it dipped, but the local dipper stripper, well, it's a good job. He's too aggressive on scraping the congealed paint off, and a lot of tear out on the casing. So I'm probably going to do it by hand with a heat gun, and fortunately I don't have too much to do. Initially I'll do the opening and the door there, the door in the dining room, and so that won't be too many pieces, and then I'll get to the restoring the casing for the 3 windows here in the dining room. But again, you're looking at the original plinth blocks that were installed in 1903, and these were probably purchased out of a catalog, and that's what they did back in 1903. So again, the original plinth's been restored, and then the original 1x baseboard, which is bigger than the modern 1x baseboard. The base cap, this is original, again scraped, sand, filled, and then the modern base cap is a little bit smaller overall. And then in both rooms the shoe is modern. But again, it's called shoe because it's not quarter round. It's not a continuous radius. It's again shallower and taller than quarter round. So that's how the dining room is looking so far. And I was able to get, I've ordered a tablecloth, but in the interim I've just got a piece of felt on the table. The table will get refinished eventually. And I did get a inexpensive rug. This is a 9 by 12, and I think it fits the room okay. And I've got a chandelier that'll install in the ceiling. I'll replace that fixture with the chandelier. I'm going to pick that up tomorrow. And of course, the chandelier is in pieces. The frame is assembled, and the wiring is in place. And but none of the prisms are hung on it. But it's an old chandelier. I think it's over 100 years old. And these chairs are just temporary. I do have some high back modern chairs. They're not in a color that I like, so I will repaint them, probably dark brown or maybe even black. I'm not sure. But they are upholstered properly for what my purposes are in this room. So again, I've got a place set up now that I can eat here. The big irony with all of the trim is I go to great lengths to scrape the paint off and sand it smooth and fill all the previous nail holes and, you know, cut things to length and so forth and so on. So, you know, and prime it and paint it so that it looks pretty good. But then, of course, as I say, the irony is that you bring it into the space where it's going to be installed, and now you got to nail it in place, and so you get dozens and dozens of nail holes that you then have to go back and patch. So there's a nail hole in the base cap. There's a nail hole in the shoe and in the baseboard. So, and they're you know, like every 16 inches. So as I say, dozens of nail holes that I will have to go around and patch and then repaint. But I think it's a little neater doing it that way than leaving it just in primer and then trying to do the finish coat after patching is done, especially since the floors have been done. The other thing I did with an original piece was the mantle. Fortunately, that was left here in the house. It didn't get destroyed or tossed out, although I did have to do a little patching and filling. So I've sanded, patched, filled, sanded, patched, filled, and so forth. It isn't perfect, but it's good enough for the time being. And because this mantle was equipped with carvings and incisions, what I did in those recesses was use some gold paint to highlight those features. I've got to go back and redo the gold and then touch up the white where the gold has bled over the incision or the carving. But right now that mantle is installed with just one screw so that I can remove it and lay it on sawhorses where it's easy to work on and do the gold paint in the carvings and the incisions. So as you can see, the gold in the sunlight. Today's a cloudy day, but in the afternoon when the sun comes in this room, the gold is a nice highlight. And then also on top of the, you can see where I bled over with the gold because it was pretty thin. I've got to go back and touch up with the white. But from overall perspective, I think that came out nice, and it's a nice little elegant touch. I don't know what I'm going to do on a permanent basis with this. I don't know if I'm going to build out a fake hearth and then put an electric flame there. My neighbor has something like that, and he uses it as a functional heater, but I'll cross that bridge later. But in the meantime, as I say, I've got the floors done in the living room and the dining room. I've got the baseboard, shoe, and cap in all 4 rooms. Here in the living room, I've got the openings cased and on both openings, and I've got the rug in the dining room, so it's moving along. And we've had a nice fall. I don't think I've turned the heat on very often, but it's 70 something today, so nice and comfortable inside the house. Just wanted to point out here on the casing, what I did was I took some 5/4 stock and duplicated the lines of the original plinth blocks and then installed these plinth blocks here. I didn't have any, nor did I want to buy fluted casing, so I bought some what they call Adams trim. I believe it's named after the Scottish architect of the late 18th century. And then at the top, I've done corner blocks, again, to duplicate the concept in the dining room, because this is the living room, and you want a bit of elegance in the public space. I'll do this same sort of setup in the hallway, and then I'll do something a little less elegant upstairs so I can save a few pennies on the budget. But I'm not sure if I'm satisfied with the size of these corner blocks. These corner blocks are recycled. They are not new. They came out of a house that was built in 1940 here in Preston, and the person that was rehabbing it kindly salvaged them for me. So I've got them on the other opening as well, but again, I'm not sure if they're proportionally the right size. They're not much, just a tiny fraction of an inch wider than the Adams trim, so I may in fact want to go with a slightly larger block, which I have. I have a lot of the corner blocks from the original, just missing the casing from the original. But in any event, that is something I will approach at another time. For the time being, I can live with this, and once I get the bulk of the work done on this house, I'll be spending the rest of my life on various weekends doing little, continuing improvement projects like those corner blocks. So, but I'm happy. The floors came out nice. I haven't done the floor in the hallway, nor have I done the stairs. I'm still working on sanding and cleaning up the banister and the balustrade and the spindles. I've got to also continue to finish sanding the treads, the risers, the cheeks, and then of course do the floor. I didn't want to put a finished floor down because there's still a lot of traffic here coming in the house, going to the kitchen. The other thing is I have to figure out how I can do the floor and still be able to access the upstairs. So I'm thinking that I will probably do this square here at the foot of the stairs, and then again, like I did over here, that masking tape is laid on one of the floorboard joints, so it's a very precise line and a very sharp line. So I'll do the same thing here, and that way I can let that fully cure, and then when I come into the house, I'm able to step from the front door and into this before I do this, or when this is cured, just this section here, then I can move to this section but still be able to move from through the front door to the bottom of the stairs to go up, and then I'll probably rig up something that I can go from here to the living room and leave this section so that I don't have to step on it while the stain is drying. And it's oil-based stain, so it needs to dry for several days. I think when I stained these floors and then put the finish on, and you can see it's a matte finish, but you can see the light from the windows reflecting off the floor. It took I think weeks, 2-3 weeks after for all the off-gassing of the stain and the finish to be eliminated in the house. So anyway, but it did subside, and so I'm fine. I'm not poisoning myself every time I take a breath. So as I say, a lot of work yet to do, and but I'm satisfied so far with how things are moving along, and still have the outside to work on, and we're going to get into the winter here soon enough. Although I think the long-term forecast is for slightly milder than typical. And occasionally we might have a few days that are below freezing, but generally here on the eastern shore of Maryland, it's not that bad. So that's what's happening. at my old house. I think in a previous video I had shown you that I've got the kitchen complete. So there's my kitchen island, and you know, I've got a functioning kitchen. I've actually got a few items in the cabinets, as I do need to function a little bit, but it seems to be working okay. And that's the goal. And so hopefully when I get the chandelier in here, that'll be a nice touch. Again, the tablecloth is on order. It's supposed to be delivered days ago, but such is the quality of the vendors that things are falling apart. So it's delayed. It'll get here, but it's just too bad that you can't get good service anymore unless you pay a substantial amount of money, which is ridiculous. In any event, that's it, and we'll see you in the next video.